Okay, so I'll kick us off. Thanks for joining today. And this is Lancashire Innovation Festival, a month of opportunities to showcase all the fantastic support that is available for SMEs who want to engage with innovation across the region. We've got, as I say, a week's left of events coming up, closing next Thursday. If you want to engage with this conversation today, please do so. We'll use the chat function for any questions, conversations. Use it as well to share email addresses and links to LinkedIn. And if you want to ask a question verbally, I think between us, if we manage the questions through the chat, and then we'll try and direct them through there to Nick, who's going to be chairing the panel, and I'll be giving him a little hand there with that. Also, you follow the conversation on Twitter and LinkedIn with the hashtag LANIF2020. But without any further ado, I'm going to pass you over now to Nick King from Lancashire University's InfoLab to kick off today's session. Over to you, Nick.
Fantastic. Thanks, Dan. And thanks, everybody, for joining us today. Nice to see some familiar faces. And I think should have a good conversation going on today. We've got a good number, and it seems to be quite a diverse audience. So in terms of what we're doing today, I'll just run through a little bit of a background. So firstly, hello from me and a number of colleagues from Lancaster University, but also from a colleague from the National Centre for Cybersecurity who will be talking with you today. And I think that's a really important thing to talk about. What we want this to be is a conversation with you, not to you, in so much as we're going to be talking through some of the work that we're doing at Lancaster University, and a lot of that will centre around the Lancashire Cyber Foundry project, the business support project that I'm currently running for Lancaster, and maybe some of the support services that can offer. But what we want to maybe talk about more broadly are some of the underpinning ideas around that project, and some of the things that some of the information we'd hope to share that we think might benefit Lancashire businesses. So just to be clear, what we're talking about in terms of a concept, and I'll run a couple of videos. We have a video coming up from my colleague, Dr. Dan Prince, who's the academic lead for our Cyber Foundries. So we have a Cyber Foundry in Lancashire and a Cyber Foundry in Greater Manchester. Greater Manchester has been running a little bit longer than our own project in Lancashire, and we're very much sister projects, learning from each other in terms of delivery, particularly in these interesting conditions. We would have naturally been delivering workshops and engagement sessions like this face to face, but unfortunately we are where we are, and we're trying to be flexible, and I think in some ways we actually get some benefit from working with broader groups through communication channels like this. We lose many things. It's nice to see people and actually shake hands with people and meet people, but it's also good to get a very diverse audience where geography actually doesn't limit people attending. So just to be clear, this isn't a technical conversation in so much as in terms of cybersecurity. Naturally, we have people at the university, and there are people on the call who can talk at a technical level, but this is much more about an idea, a concept, an experience we have around something called cyber innovation. So it's about the broader value add that we believe investing in cybersecurity can actually bring to your business. We'll have some context setting, some presentations. I've got a couple of videos that I'll share with you. There's one that you will get to see Dr. Prince talking around some of the underlying principles of the delivery that sits behind it, so the academic principles. A little bit about Lancaster's academic work there as well, but also I'll share with you an animation that we've done just to kind of introduce you to the project itself, possibly in a more entertaining fashion than I can. So what we hope you would gain, naturally more awareness of what we're doing at Lancaster, but I think it's really important just to put it out there to say that we're one of a number of institutions in Lancashire. This is about Lancashire innovation. So please do connect with UCLan, connect with Edge Hill, connect with other universities. There are many support projects across the Northwest universities and beyond that can possibly help you in these conversations. So please do connect. Whereas Lancaster, naturally, I will always talk from that position, and we have some very defined strengths. Other universities have similar strengths and have other projects, and we would urge you to just connect with higher education. We're very keen to have a conversation with you about how we can help, and again, particularly at these times. So what we hope you gain? Greater awareness. What we hope we will gain? Well, hopefully meet some new people. We'll have a conversation. We'll talk through some of the work we're doing, get your input into it. We very much need to be driven by the recipients of the work that we do, realistically. But also in a very selfish manner, as the manager of Lancashire Cyber Foundry, I'm here pitching for the project. And I'll talk a little bit about that and what we can offer through it. So I would hope to actually get some new participants on that project as well. So in terms of running order, what we're going to do, you'll have a little bit from me, so a little bit of context there about where we're at, the challenging times we're at, the slightly the accelerated amount of digitization that we're actually experiencing now. Some interesting figures coming around that say things like digital strategies are being accelerated in terms of their adoption within companies by up to 6 years. Digital change itself, because of the nature of the isolation we're facing and the channels we have to now move to, digitalization effectively is becoming much more prevalent. Along with that, naturally comes along security concerns and security measures that need to be put in place to ensure those channels are safe and data that's exchanged is safe. But what we're going to talk about really is what's the broader opportunity. So what I'll do first of all, I'll talk about who's coming on after me. So we're very, very fortunate to have a representative from the National Centre for Cyber Security, and I'll leave that person to introduce themselves and perhaps he or she will explain why. And then we'll move on to a very interesting piece of work, which is really in many ways the core of the conversation, from Dr. Simon Tomlinson, who's going to be talking about a piece of research he did looking at the link or the benefits between the cyber essential security accreditation program for businesses and greater levels of innovation or business benefit associated with that, outside of purely cyber benefits and security benefits. So to start off with, and I should say as well, my colleague Dr. Charles Weir is joining us as well, and we'll be having a panel session later on, and also Colin McLaughlin, who's Technology Transfer Manager at Lancaster University's InfoLab as well, will be joining us on a panel session. So at that point, hopefully, you'll have had enough content from us to prime your questions, and we'll have a conversation about some of the things that we're talking about. But what I'd like to do at the moment is just share my screen. And Dan was saying that please could people turn off video feeds just to optimize bandwidth while I do that. Just to show you a presentation from Dr. Prince to talk about the principles of Cyber Foundry, but then I'll just do a little promotional video as well, a 2-minute animation around Lancashire Cyber Foundry itself, just to kind of kick us off on context. So on the assumption I can navigate Zoom, I shall hopefully be able to share this with you. So okay, and if we press play, can everybody see that?
My name is Dan Prince. I'm the Deputy Director for the Cybersecurity Research Centre at Lancaster University. Increasingly, over the last decade or so, SMEs have become increasingly under attack from cyber criminals. So much so that they're losing a significant amount of money. So cybersecurity is a really important step for businesses in order to protect themselves from loss due to fraud or extortion or ransomware or anything along those lines. So it's really important that companies engage with the whole cybersecurity agenda. Lancaster University has a Cybersecurity Research Centre, which is an NCSC EPSRC Academic Centre of Excellence in Cybersecurity Research. We also have a master's degree in cybersecurity, which is certified by the NCSC. So we are a recognised Centre of Excellence for cybersecurity research, and we do a lot of engagement with businesses of all shapes and sizes. We actually run 3 business engagement projects: the Lancashire Cyber Foundry, the Greater Manchester Cyber Foundry, and the Secure Digitalisation University Enterprise Zone. On all of these engagements, work with businesses to exchange the knowledge that we generate as academics out of the research centre and pass that on to businesses so that they may be able to develop new products, new services, and be able to innovate. Cyber innovation is an important process whereby we work with companies to really try to exploit the benefits of cybersecurity. So we don't just get companies to think about how to protect themselves, but we try to get them to think about how they can improve their business operation using cybersecurity. So what we do is we think about cyber-enabled innovation and cyber-dependent innovation. Cyber-enabled innovation is where we try to work with companies to get them to think about what they can do more when they're protected. So for example, can they do more, how can they hold more data and therefore get more utility from having that data by understanding what their customers want? Cyber-dependent innovation is where we work with companies to really think about how they can use the underlying cyber security technologies such as cryptography or new ways of identifying people to develop new products and services, new business processes that would really help the company expand and grow. The key part of cyber innovation is the innovation part. Cyber innovation is an innovative practice, and it really helps the company in two ways. One, it helps them expand out their own abilities in terms of innovation. Innovation is a process that we can work with companies on to help them improve across all aspects of their business, not just using cybersecurity. But on the flip side, cyber innovation is really about exploiting cybersecurity to its fullest. And so that includes things like working at how we can use cybersecurity to improve and make companies more efficient, but also how they can signal to the market that they are protected and that they are using cybersecurity best practices. So that helps them potentially differentiate in the market as well as developing new products and services. The Lancashire Cyber Foundry is one of our business engagement projects, working with SMEs to really educate them around cybersecurity and how to defend themselves, and then how to use cybersecurity practice to innovate their own business processes and then to grow the company. And we take companies through a structured process around secure digitalization, where we help them to build and foster their own cyber innovation strategies. And then we also have the opportunity to work very closely with those companies to develop new proof of concept products, services, business processes, based on the research innovation that we develop within the university.
Excellent. So just stopping the share while I load up the second presentation. So that was a slight overview, as I say, from our academic lead on the project. So that shows you some of the underpinning principles that sits behind. What I'll just do now is I'll just load up the second presentation, which is a bit shorter and just talks a little bit about Lancashire Cyber Foundry. Just a couple of notes there, talking just while I'm navigating to that. Just pause this while I'm talking. Bear with me. I think it's important to mention as well that what we're intending to do and what our aim is about enabling the sector as well. So in terms of our delivery, both as a university but also through Lancashire Cyber Foundry, we're helping people, I think, get on that ladder, try and get people to engage with cybersecurity as an area or a concept. And what we're really interested in doing is helping them then engage with providers in the region to actually take them forward. So we're trying to sort of help build confidence, maybe do some small prototyping projects as well to explore areas as opposed to actually carrying out the work ourselves. So what I'll do now, I'll show you the second screen, now the second presentation. I'll just take it on to that. Hopefully you'll be able to see this.
The Lancashire Cyber Foundry is a digital innovation programme for small and medium-sized businesses across the region. Delivered by the computer science and business experts at Lancaster University, it supports organisations to develop strong business strategies to realise their digital potential. We'll show you how to defend your business from cyber attack and comply with data management and security regulations. We will review your current systems and equip you with the tools and specialist knowledge to innovate within your sector. We will help you to transform your ideas into new digital products and services to enable you to grow. We call this secure digitalization. We live in a digital age. In 2017, data overtook oil as the most valuable commodity. Technology is continually evolving, and cybersecurity must keep pace to combat cybercriminals. 97% of businesses use some form of digital technology, yet almost half of these businesses reported a cyber attack in the last year, and 32% were attacked at least once a week, with 1 in 5 losing money or data. customers are increasingly aware of privacy, security, and how companies use their data. Defense through robust cybersecurity must underpin all business operations and provide the foundation for innovation and growth. We have developed a two-part programme to support SMEs in Lancashire to defend, innovate, and grow their business. Part 1 is Business Strategy, a programme of blended learning incorporating workshops, online resources, and one-to-one business support. The workshops focus on 4 key areas: cybersecurity, business modelling, understanding innovation, and planning for the future. Part 2 is our digital innovation support, where your business can explore the potential of new digital products and services. It's a fully funded research and development service to enable our software engineers to work with you to investigate innovative digital solutions to grow your business.
Excellent. So that was just a short background about, as I said, the academic underpinnings of the project, but also the project itself, the Lancashire Cyber Foundry. And again, just to reiterate, we're interested in working with people to try and engage them in the topic area. And even if you're not, it's not something that you can engage with through this program, we'd love to have that conversation with your colleagues such as Dan and Charles, have other ways to work with people around cybersecurity in terms of either technical disciplines or wider research areas. So that's probably enough from me, I think. What I shall do now, I shall pass on, having given you a little bit of a background about the project that we're promoting. And I should say, I'll get shot by my colleague Gemma, who's on the call, I think, as well, who leads our promotion, if I don't say that our workshops are running in the second half of November, and we're very keen to take registrations for that. So please chat to myself or Gemma if you'd like to do that. But in the meantime, Dan, if you don't mind, I will pass across to the representative from the National Centre of Cybersecurity, who will talk about some of the complementary offerings that they offer to help business support services.
Good afternoon, Nick, and thank you for inviting me on the call this afternoon. And thank you for everybody joining the call. My name's Chris. I'm the Business Engagement Officer at the National Cybersecurity Centre. So I'll just take the next 10 to 15 minutes to talk about some of the work we do at the NCSC. Some of the impacts and risks we're seeing and the consequences of those cyber threats, and some of the support available from the National Cybersecurity Centre, which complements the work of the Lancashire Cyber Foundry as a business enabler and security innovation. So if I just share my slides with you now. So the National Cybersecurity Centre was established at the end of 2016 with the national ambition of making the UK the safest place to live and work online. There was recognition that the UK needed a one-stop shop for cybersecurity. So the National Cybersecurity Centre was founded out of that ambition and objective. So we provide guidance not only to industry and SMEs, but also to the public sector, members of the public, and to cybersecurity professionals and public sector as well. So we provide that central voice for all of cybersecurity. So there is a one consistent and concise message for cybersecurity support and guidance across the UK. And all of this is supported by the National Cybersecurity Programme, which is the aim of defending against cyber threats to UK cyberspace, deterring our adversaries from attacking the UK cyber network, and developing our own skills and capabilities. And all of this is supported by a £1.9 billion transformative investment over 5 years. And that's working with our international partnerships to establish and grow our cyber capability and cyber security. It's important to talk about cybersecurity within the framework of people, processes, and technology. Too often, cybersecurity is equated with the technology and perceived as an IT issue. Now, whilst technology is a fundamental part of cybersecurity, it's just about having the correct people and processes in place to build your business cyber resilience. It's about having a workforce who are trained, who have a certain level of cyber awareness training, that they can differentiate between a genuine and malicious email, and know the processes for reporting a cyber incident. Because often your workforce are your first line of defense when it comes to cyber security and identifying cyber threats. I'll talk more about the risk that poses. And it's also about having the correct processes in place as well. Having those business processes for updating your software, a process for backing up, and a process for responding and recovering from a cyber incident. Because we now know that it's not a question of if, but when an organization suffers a cyber incident. Because there is no such thing as the perfect cyber defense, there's no such thing as perfect security. It's important that businesses have a process for responding and recovering from a cyber breach, and I'll talk more about that later on. And this all comes under this idea of cyber resilience, the ability to cope with unforeseen incidents, both malicious and accidental. So what is the threat? What is the threat actors who are trying to breach the UK cyberspace? Because any system, any organization, regardless of shape, size, or sector, can be broken into. And at given time, motivation, and means, threat actors can access our networks and our databases. So it's our collective job to make it a hostile environment for threat actors to breach our security. Now, for the sake of this webinar, threat actors can be broken down into 5 main categories. We have our cyber criminals, which is the most common threat actor when it comes to attacks to SMEs, who are there to gain as much, who carry out cyber attacks for a monetary gain, and carry out phishing campaigns and ransomware attacks to randomly target unsuspecting victims to try and make money or extract data from their victims. Nation states are those who are backed by their respective governments and are often highly skilled professionals to carry out espionage on behalf of the nation states. And then we have insiders as well. These are often disgruntled colleagues who are looking to harm or damage the business in some way. But we also have accidental insiders as well, individuals who may click on a link or open a malicious file without realizing, which then compromises the network and the organization. And then we have our hacktivists and terrorists, who are driven by a certain belief or ideology to harm a targeted organization or a targeted business. So cyber attacks can loosely be broken down into 2 categories. We have our non-targeted and targeted attacks. And time again, we see SMEs the victims of non-targeted attacks, because this is where the threat actors are trying to reach as many businesses as possible to gain that monetary return or a collection of huge levels of data. And this is most commonly, this commonly starts with a phishing attempt or a suspicious email, which we've all received. This is a fraudulent email purporting to be a genuine company, often trying to get you to provide sensitive information or to direct you to a fake website, which is also known as water holing. A good example of this is websites pretending to be HMRC to get unsuspecting victims to provide their sensitive data, and this happens on a too regular basis. And then we have ransomware as well, which is an extortion malware, which encrypts an organization or an individual's computer network in order to extract a ransom for the database and files to be decrypted. A good example of this was the WannaCry incident in 2017, which impacted the NHS. And we have scanning as well. This is where threat actors are randomly scanning parts of the internet to look for organizations and businesses with certain vulnerabilities and certain access points. So it's important that SMEs are aware of these non-targeted attacks and even the targeted attacks as well, because no business is too small or too large to be the victim of a cyber attack. Too often there's a misnomer that a cyber criminal would never go after my business because I'm too small, and why would they be interested in me? But cyber criminals can target thousands and thousands of businesses in just one campaign. And while the return on investment may be smaller, if all those businesses pay out or impacted, that return to the threat actor can be phenomenal. So it's important that organizations are aware of these incidents. I just want to focus on phishing emails a little bit more, because the Cybersecurity Breaches Survey of 2020, of over 1,000 businesses that were interviewed, nearly half of those had experienced a cyber breach in the last 12 months, with 67% of those breaches coming from fraudulent emails or being directed to fraudulent websites. So this is where an email is sent to an unsuspecting victim and they open that link or open a malicious file. Which is why I say that often at times people are our frontline defense when it comes to cybersecurity. So do you have a workforce in place who have the correct level of cybersecurity awareness training? And often it's hard to equate a cyber breach with the physical and monetary impact. Often at times when we talk to leadership or exec board, it's good to be able to equate this in financial loss and financial impact. Which is why the breaches survey identified that of the average annual cost to a business that loses data, assets, or breaches is over £3,000, which for a small micro business is a phenomenal amount of money. This is the difference between a business surviving or going under. And for those medium and larger organizations, the cost goes up dramatically, often into the millions of pounds. So what does that cost look like? What is the financial impact of a cyber breach? We can break this down into two categories. We have our short-term and long-term costs and the direct and indirect costs. Now, the short-term direct cost, we're looking at these, potentially paying the cyber ransom and the extortion cost, the financial theft, whether that's loss of data, intellectual property, or finances. And it's the staff response as well. So on one side, you have a workforce who are no longer to carry out their daily operations, but also the staff resource needed to respond to that cyber attack, which results in overtime and potentially contracting external staff. But then we have the long-term costs as well, the long-term indirect costs, which is your reputational damage, the supply chain attrition, and loss of new existing customers. So the impact of a cyber breach can still be felt weeks, months, years after recovery. And in fact, some businesses never fully recover from a cyber breach. So what can we do then? The NCSC provides a host of support and guidance and various products for organizations of all sizes. So I appreciate not everything I mentioned today will be applicable for your organization. If that's the case, I can talk more about that in the questions and refer you to some parts of the NCSC website. But for a start for 10, these are the 6 behaviors we should all be adopting, whether in our business lives or personal lives. The Cyber Aware campaign, which was launched earlier this year, sets out 6 steps we should all be taking to secure our business and our personal data. And this looks at having a separate password for emails, because as we know, our email accounts are often our most critical accounts for accessing other accounts. And the reason for having a separate password is that if one of your other passwords is compromised, a threat actor will still not be able to get access to your email. And then about having a strong password using 3 random words, saving your password in a browser and turning on 2-factor authentication. And it's about making sure that we keep our devices up to date and make sure that we turn on backup, so our most critical data is backed up on a regular basis. And this has never been more significant as we move to greater levels of remote working as a result of COVID-19, which is why we released the COVID-19 SME support pack. I won't go into too much detail about this now unless people have questions afterwards. But it's enough to say that the support pack outlines the security requirements for home working and video conferencing and helping those businesses moving from the physical to the digital environment. As we know, many businesses had to shut their physical premises and move their operations online, and with that comes their own vulnerabilities and risks, which need to be identified by all businesses, regardless of shape and size. So the small business guide then, now whilst labeled as a small business guide, is applicable to all businesses. There's a misnomer that cybersecurity has to be, has to be complex, which often puts many SMEs off from implementing cybersecurity because they feel it has to be difficult and challenging. So what the small business guide does, it gets you to implement these cybersecurity controls in a very accessible and actionable way, and moves away from some of the technical jargon that puts off many small businesses. So this is about backing up your data. It's making sure that your most critical business data is backed up on a regular basis, and that you identify what data you need to back up should you be the victim of a cyber attack. So if you do suffer a cyber breach, you know that your most critical data is backed up and you can access it whilst you're responding and recovering from the cyber incident. And this comes down to protecting your organization from malware, the steps you need to take to make sure that you defend yourself as best as possible so you don't suffer a ransomware or phishing email attack, and the steps you need to take to protect yourself from malware, such as backing up your devices and keeping your software up to date. Which comes to keeping your devices safe. Do you have a process in place for making sure that your employees' devices, phones, laptops, tablets are updated on a regular basis, that they're patched when a new update comes out? And do you have a process in place for tracking those devices should they be lost or stolen? And in those scenarios, is there a process in place for being able to wipe them remotely? Most devices have this capability built in, so that's something that businesses now need to consider with a workforce being a distributed workforce. And again, it comes down back to using passwords to protect your data. Make sure you use passwords to protect your most critical data, and having those strong passwords in place. And about avoiding phishing attacks. Make sure you have staff who can identify a suspicious email and know how to report it, and know the steps to take to report a phishing attack. But as I said at the beginning, there's no such thing as a perfect cybersecurity. Businesses also need to look at the preparations for responding to a cyber incident, which is why we published the Response and Recovery Guide, which walks businesses through the steps to prepare for an incident, and then what they need to do to respond to a cyber attack, and how to resolve the incidents, and then improve their cybersecurity once the cyber breach has been resolved. So there's two elements here. First off, there's your protection you need in place, having good cybersecurity controls to protect your organization from a cyber incident, but also having a preparation measures in place, having a business continuity plan in place to respond and recover from a cyber incident. And I've just listed the action fraud number there because the first point of call for any organization suffering a cyber attack is to contact Action Fraud, who will be able to log the incidents and be able to provide a level of support. And finally, I just want to touch on Cyber Essentials before I hand over to my colleague. The Cyber Essentials scheme is a government-backed scheme that will help businesses protect themselves from the most common cyber attacks, regardless of size or shape of organization. The certification will help businesses protect against the most common cyber attacks. And once businesses have implemented those controls, they can look to apply for Cyber Essentials certification, which comes with a host of benefits, which I'll let my colleague explain further. So that's everything from me. I apologise if I've run over there. I'm on the call until 4:30, so if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to pick those up at the end. So thank you, Nick.
Chris, thank you for helping us out there, and thanks for the talk and spending some time to come and join. And I'm going to pass over now to Simon.
Okay, many thanks, Dan. Let me just see if I can call up my slides. I hope that you can all see that and hear me okay. Okay, well, my name's Simon Tomlinson from Lancaster University. My day job is for the Data Science Institute here at the uni. And I just want to tell you a little bit about some of the work that we've done at the university, looking at cybersecurity and its links to innovation. So I won't talk for too long, but I just want to give you an idea of what we've done. So first of all, I'll give you a bit of background about Cyber Essentials. Then I'll talk through a study that the university did with a firm partners called QG Management Standards, and then look at a little bit about the motivation behind that, what we found in the study, and then really this is what I want to get towards, the wider implications of the links between cybersecurity, awareness of cybersecurity, and fostering an innovation culture within organizations, because we actually did find some pretty interesting things when we went out. So I don't know how much you'll know about Cyber Essentials. There's a wealth of information published by NCSC and IASME, which we can provide links for afterwards. But essentially, this is an NCSC-backed scheme that's been running a good number of years now, still running at the moment, and it's grown out of an initiative that the government came up with for looking at the standard challenges that SMEs can face from cyber attacks within the modern environment. So it's not intended to make SMEs or people who work there absolute experts in cybersecurity, but it's to give SMEs a decent level of understanding about typical threats and the steps that they can take to kind of secure their businesses against typical threats, improve their cyber resilience, and what you can do to recover from a cyber attack. So essentially, this is a program with a couple of levels. This you can either go through the program yourself, self-certify, make a declaration. That's the Cyber Essentials level. Cyber Essentials Plus is where you would go work your way through the resources, the technical guidance, take the steps dictated by the program, and then bring in an independent assessor to give you certification that you do adhere to the relevant standards. So that in a nutshell is Cyber Essentials. Now, we were commissioned jointly by NCSC to look at how effective Cyber Essentials had been in a couple of kind of allied but interesting ways. So firstly, there was a growing feeling that there was anecdotal evidence that going through the program of Cyber Essentials was allowing companies to become certainly more resilient, certainly more aware, better organized in terms of their approach to cybersecurity. But aside from that, there was the belief that coming through this exercise of looking at their use of information, looking at the way that information flowed through the company and to customers and suppliers, etc., there was a gain for the companies of deeper understanding of information flow, a deeper understanding of the role of information within their operations, and coming out of that, more of an innovative culture. But around the program, it was felt that there was actually no formal evidence that this was the case. So we were commissioned to go and assess whether that was the truth or not. So looking at our findings in the two separate parts. And so looking firstly at the effects of Cyber Essentials on the cybersecurity capability. So we went out to approximately 800 companies across the north of England to like ask for their experiences of cyber essentials. We got a response from 132, and it was interesting because a lot of what I'm going to tell you here kind of chimes in to what my colleague had just said before, in that cyber attacks are incredibly prevalent. Yeah. So we were talking mainly to non-technology focused small to medium enterprises, of which 81% had actually detected cyber attacks. Yeah. So the common ones there, spoofing, phishing, etc., malicious emails, what have you. But that's interesting. Like 4 out of 5 had detected attacks. And that's not to say that all of them hadn't had a form of attack or another, like just the remaining 19% had not picked it up. Now, we saw that also this is particularly true of micro SMEs. 72% said that they were actually having a requirement from their customers, that the customers themselves needed assurance that they had some sort of competence, some sort of sign-off that they handled data in a responsible way and were somehow had measures in place to protect them against cyber attacks. So that's a trend coming out of that, in actual fact. There's some other research that we did to back that up, but just moving on from that, we found also that companies said that they'd started off, at a reasonable to low level of confidence in terms of their resiliency to cyber attack. But coming through the program, that 68% of them said that this had significantly enhanced their attitude, their resilience, or their perceived resilience to cyber attack. So in technical terms or operational terms, it's having a positive effect. So moving on from that to kind of the implications about the culture of the company. So like the innovation and improvement culture. So I've got a graph on the slide there, which it just shows comparing the companies that we spoke to who had engaged with the Cyber Essentials program to like a nationwide survey of companies looking at their attitude towards innovation. We see that there's a much higher level of innovation in many of its facets within this group than outside. Now, I want to be careful to just say, that's a correlation. We're not claiming anything causal from this, but looking at the points made below, this is directly coming back from the companies. But over half there said that going through this program of Cyber Essentials had kind of galvanized them in terms of having an impact on both their strategy, their operations, encouraging them to look carefully at the processes which underpin their business and rework them in such a way as to streamline, as to provide greater resiliency within the processes. And this is very interesting in as much as it wasn't the original thrust of Cyber Essentials, but 37% of the respondents said that the activity, going through this activity, had actually increased new business. Now, we went down a level to speak to the people who had supplied this data, say, okay, now qualitatively, what has changed there? So they were saying that essentially this had given them confidence to move into new products, new markets online. Yeah, they had further confidence in placing their operations online because they knew that they were defensible. Yeah, so it had led to innovation that way. And also this kind of went back to the point made before about this becoming an increasing requirement for customers to say, are you a safe pair of hands with our data? Yeah, so this had had like a catalytic effect on bringing a greater level of awareness, a greater culture of innovation to the businesses. So I'll finish with this final slide here, just the wider implications of what we found. So essentially, I mean, this chimes into the previous presentation, improving your cybersecurity, yeah, it's going to protect your business. You know, you've just heard about the impact that a cyber attack can have in terms of reputational damage, etc. So, you know, we can take that as read pretty much. But like moving on from that, the analysis of like the role played by cybersecurity around the assets of your business has the effect of getting your people to think more clearly about the technical environment from the infrastructure and the surrounding processes, looking at the processes and responsibilities that like kind of through which roles are taken within the organization, through which information moves. And like most importantly, perhaps as from like, you know, the fostering the culture of innovation, it's like it provides you with a solid platform for this, but like increasing your confidence to move your operations online, which, as my colleague said, is increasingly important in these like pandemic times. And like there's probably no going back from this in terms of like the online culture, but also it increases customers' confidence in engaging with you. Yeah, soon as they see that their information is going to be safe with you. So that's essentially all of the messages I wanted to share with you. Just if you'd like to speak to me subsequently, that's who I am. I welcome your questions in the panel session later. So essentially, that's all that I had. So I will hand back to Dan, if that's okay.
Smashing, Simon. Thank you for that. Thanks for the... Nick, I think we're going to move over now onto the panel section. There's that's the conclusion of the talks there. So we've got Nick on. We have Charles Weir, Colin McLaughlin, Chris, and Simon all ready to take questions. So before we kind of wait for one or two people to prompt from the audience, and please do, if you're ready to, if you're in the audience, feel free to turn your cameras on if you'd like to ask questions. Quite happy for people to turn the microphones on and turn this into a bit of a discussion. Thanks for that, guys. Some incredibly useful information there, and I certainly have a couple of questions written down myself. I think I'll just kick off with, and this might be for Simon, for Chris. Chris, you mentioned about the changes that COVID has brought about in terms of the workforce, and you know, I suppose a lot of the kind of work that you guys do, and it's certainly from Nick, Colin and the team, is directed towards business owners. But I think my question would be that a lot of people now are working from home, a lot of people who are staff are employees. What should be expectations generally of members of staff who are now working from home in terms of the support that they should be getting from businesses to make sure that they're well covered from cybersecurity point of view, many of whom will probably have no idea what cybersecurity even is. So what would you say there?
Chris, do you want to play to that?
Yeah, absolutely, Simon. I think that's an excellent question, because you know, many staff and many employees will be you know, separated from their IT team. If we were back in the office, many times the IT team would be tucked away and we wouldn't have anything to do with them unless there was an issue and we had to go find them out. But now we often find that we all have a collective responsibility when it comes to cybersecurity. I said at the beginning, you know, cybersecurity is no longer just an IT issue, and it's something that we all have to take kind of responsibility for and make sure that we're working in a safe and secure way. That said, employees have a right to feel supported from their employer and their IT team, and should you know, should have a reasonable level of security in place, which has been given by their employer. But if you know, if staff feel that they need more training or they feel, you know, disconnected, the NCSC does have a top tips for staff training tool on our website, which is a 30-minute training session for all staff, which is free of charge. People can just go onto the website and work through that training, which gives all staff a level of cybersecurity awareness training. And this gives staff that reassurance about working safely and securely online, because we're not expecting each individual to read through NCSC guidance and implement these security controls, but just making that first step to understanding the environments and what they can do to work safely and securely. Check out the NCSC training module, which I'll post a link to now, and have those conversations with your line managers. Have a conversation with the IT team, and ask questions, because cybersecurity isn't easy. This is something that is rapidly changing, and we should feel supported. So any questions from staff or workforce, they can come to the NCSC, talk to your IT team, and work yourselves. Work with Lancashire Cyber Foundry to make sure they get the best support possible.
Thanks, Chris. Anything to add? Has anyone got anything to add on this, Simon? Or?
Well, I'd agree with everything that Chris just said there, in as much as it's primarily the responsibility of the organisation to set the expectations for their employees, to make sure that the policies around the use of their equipment and systems are clearly stated and clearly understood. Just like kind of linking back to Cyber Essentials and the survey that we took, one of the things that we found was, with the increased awareness of cybersecurity, we found that many of the organizations had actually shifted cybersecurity to be represented at a board level. Yeah, so that's sending out a clear message of how important this is to an organization, and like that message from the top being propagated down throughout the employees is obviously the way forward to make sure that things are appropriately secured.
Smashing. Thank you. I'm not sure who this might be. This may be for Nick, perhaps, or Colin. Just in general, thinking the whole session is built around Lancashire Innovation Festival, and just thinking on that kind of wider picture. Lancashire's got a strong history and a track record in aerospace, manufacturing. What are the cyber challenges that those big sectors might be facing? What sort of work is going on there to support that?
I'm happy to pick up if you want.
I was going to say, I'll pass that across to Colin. He works very closely with those sectors.
And we've been working very closely around the Made Smarter initiative. So in the Northwest, there's a Northwest pilot program where our management school is delivering training to managers about the processes to put in place to enable their organizations to take on board the sort of concept of industrial digitalization. One of the things that we've been very interested in working around them with has been the conversation around the cybersecurity challenges that industrialization brings. So a lot of the literature that's out there and a lot of the promotional materials that were in sort of Jürgen Meyer's report are very much focused around closing the productivity gap and the benefits that having proactive maintenance and all these sorts of initiatives bring. At the same time, the security conversation isn't keeping pace with the implementation. So one of the things we set out with Lanc Cyber Foundry and in relation, because it's the Northwest pilot tying into GM Cyber Foundry and around the concept of the enterprise zone, was very much to start talking about when you are trying to close a productivity gap through these types of technologies, bearing in mind that as you introduce new sort of materials into your business process, making sure that as you do that implementation, you're thinking about the security and putting steps in place at the get-go, rather than having to retrospectively think about security after you've already done an installation, because that just adds to the cost. And I think one of the core points that the programs and initiatives that people are undertaking is keen to do is to move away from just viewing cybersecurity as purely a defensive measure. It's a very proactive step to take, and by doing things like Cyber Essentials, it gives you a benchmark of capability, and it's the ability to then trade in a fashion where you can highlight the fact that you have thought about these security concerns, because trust in systems and trust in the new processes is very much still a barrier to adoption.
Smashing. Just thinking as well, Charles, do you want to just add to that at all? I think you're just on, if we can just ask you to unmute, if that's okay. Great.
Thank you. We have the technology. I was going to add that the actual process of figuring out that Colin's talking about is a sort of business of working through what the threats are likely to be. What are your security problems likely to be? And it is surprising just how easy that can be. And it's usually much less than half a day. And the bonus, as Colin says, of doing it is that you may find yourself spending less money on the things that turn out not to be threats and actually getting more benefit from it. So that's the sort of work we've been doing.
Okay, thank you. Spending money on the things that people are perceiving to be threats. What has the kind of the type of threat changed for the general business, the typical SME through the COVID pandemic? Are we seeing certain types of cyber attack that are more prevalent, or has the pandemic changed any of that?
Chris?
Yes, absolutely. So we did a joint advisory back in April with the National Homeland Security over in the US, and there's some interesting points which came out of that report. First and foremost, that there was definitely following the first few weeks and months, there was a huge spike in government-related phishing emails, primarily because the thirst for information around COVID-19, was so high that cyber criminals really capitalized on that demand for information, and especially for businesses who are applying for government grants and loans. A lot of these were being spoofed. And what we found was cyber criminals were also purporting to be genuine members either of government or of the World Health Organization, basically making these phishing emails look as genuine as possible. You've got to appreciate when people are going through something we haven't really ever experienced, and the need to keep your business running is so high that these attempts were quite successful, because people were giving away their data and their information, thinking that these were prominent, these were genuine emails. So we've definitely seen an increase in phishing emails over the last 6 to 9 months. And we also need to be aware of the risks that come from home working. So staff now being able to access, is whether staff have access to sites which may be malicious, or just the risk and vulnerabilities that come around home working, which leads to a greater risk of insider threat. So that accidental clicking on links or malicious websites has definitely been a problem with remote working. So staff really need to be aware of an increase in phishing emails and the risks that come from remote working. I could go on, but I'll leave it there.
No, thanks, Chris. I just noticed that Nick's put something quite interesting as well, kind of asking out to the audience and around what their experiences are of cyber challenges and cyber security. I know, since going to work from home, it's struck me that cyber criminals are probably more aware of that fact now, that there are a lot of people working from home who perhaps don't have a good enough understanding of what cybersecurity is. And I keep popping to the window and looking up and down the street to make sure there's no shady figures messing around with the telephone poles or the BT boxes. But interested to hear if anybody else has come across examples out there of anecdotally people concerned, or indeed have they been asked by cybersecurity services to do things like cyber essentials and look at their credentials at all. What do you typically find, guys, is like that first conversation when you speak to somebody about cybersecurity? What's that often like?
Is it a topic that just doesn't come up at the moment? That part of our work is raising awareness as well. So just to pick up on what Dan was saying there, you know, all the sort of anecdotal figures that we see out there point to a significant increase in digitalization. So you're not just talking around companies generally digitalizing, and that has accelerated significantly. But the complexity has changed as well because people are working from home, which naturally introduces a lot more diversity and threat. I was just wondering, from our point of view, part of our sort of mandate and the reason, you know, the Cyber Foundry projects exist is to help people understand that landscape. As a start point, you know, we talk about defending. So how can we actually defend our systems? And then we move on to innovate and grow. But I'm just curious, is this a topic that just doesn't come up either with yourselves or with, I know there's a couple of people who maybe work with businesses. Is it just not a topic of conversation, perhaps?
Hi, Nick. My name's Kate Holden from Light Computing, and we deliver cybersecurity consultancy in the area for the Northwest. It is something that's been coming up for us over the last couple of years, but also very much so over the last few months when people started to have remote working. There was very much a sort of a fluster around what should we be doing, should we be looking at the way that we're working, and I think that there are several things that we've found over the last couple of years and in the last couple of months is that it's trying to get that culture within a business. Somebody asked a question about what should employers be doing for their employees. And it's sort of a two-way street, really, and it's trying to foster that culture, and that's what we very much promote when we go into a business of talking to people that are at board level and wanting to foster a culture of cybersecurity protection within their business, particularly around cyber essentials, because that's one of the areas that we focus on. But also trying to get them to engage their employees in understanding the reason why they're doing it. And sometimes I think the conversation I have on a regular basis is, you know, why wouldn't you be thinking about your password, etc., and security on your work every day as you do with your bank? You know, sometimes I hear people saying my staff don't use passwords because they don't like them, you know, and that's not something that we do in our everyday lives. I know that's quite hard to believe, but that is a conversation that I have on a regular basis. So I think that it's trying to foster that whole culture within the business, and that's what we're seeing more and more of because of remote working. We're seeing more of in the last few months.
Fantastic, thanks, Kate. I mean, I'd love to chat more. As I was saying, the real drive of the project is to introduce people to the sector, to help people talk about the topic area. So I'd really love to find out more about your experiences on that and see if we can have a chat about that. But I think you're right. You know, I've been working in this area on and off and with Dan for many years, and the consistent thread that sits underneath it is the human element of it. The technology and the sophistication has changed, you know, radically. The human side of it is the bit that's a little bit slow in catching up from what we've seen. And actually, particularly around COVID, I think, as Chris was saying, that the social engineering side of things is so often the weak link, and that idea that it's just too much of a challenge to actually change my password. I'll just leave that, or I'll just recycle the old one. And that's the real challenge in many ways. And that, for me, that's where I hope the drive of some of this work is new, in so much as we're not just talking about the risk, because I think it's quite hard to sell risk sometimes. But if we can talk about selling the opportunity as well and explaining the wider opportunity, then maybe that will lead to broader adoption. But that's a conversation I'd love to have a chat with you about, Kate.
Yeah, more than happy. Thanks.
Thank you.
And I was returning to that point about the risks. It is interesting that it's you rarely see the explanations for what you're doing. So Chris's 6 points, they're wonderful. I love them, but it doesn't say why you don't have the same password for two things. You know, a lot of people, I know in my house, a lot of people do not understand why you shouldn't have the same password for everything. And I sometimes wonder if there's a motivation thing there.
No, I think you're right. My own particular bugbear is the 2-meter rule, and not because I don't adhere to it, because nobody at government has really ever said why 2 meters. Yeah, you know, it's very, you know, whether you believe in it or not, you can understand about droplet projection and different size of droplets, and that's why 2 meters is a calculation. Nobody's ever said that, and how you actually communicate a message without actually explaining the simple facts behind it. But I think you're right as well, and that information is really important because it's a risky area in terms of, you know, I would think, and I'm fairly confident that within a business, it's a risky area to adopt responsibility for. If that lands on your plate, you'd like to be a little bit educated about the risks you're adopting. Myself and Simon, wearing different hats, work a lot around data, particularly around healthcare, and the role of, you know, the lead person who has responsibility in an organization for data is a particularly challenging one, because you have to understand the context for that. And again, there's a lot of crossover between data security, privacy, consent, and cyber. What we've found in even quite, you know, large organizations, that the senior people just don't have that education. They can't have that level of education to appropriately assess risks, and that's a real challenge for them. So these are all conversations we'd love to have, just to raise that awareness and help people understand their own contextual risk, because risk profiles for companies change depending on your company, depending on your activity, and the level of protection and security you ascribe to that is bespoke to you. So we're very keen to help people understand that and then go and engage with the sector to get that protection that they need.
May I say something?
Sure.
Hi, everybody. I was just chatting to Dan before, actually. I think with a lot of small businesses and micro businesses, they don't necessarily understand what cybersecurity is, or they think that we're too small to be targeted. Yeah. Something we've recently started doing is doing like a human vulnerability assessment for free with clients, and doing a bit of a questionnaire, which is anonymous. It can go out to a key number of people within a business or everybody, and it comes back and it shows where the risks are. And when you can demonstrate that to somebody high up in the C panel, you know, you can say, well, you know, 80% of your staff don't realize that they have to change the passwords once a month or whatever. And when they can justify that, they go, okay, let's invest in training, and let's invest in doing this and that. Because if you've never had to do it before, why should you start doing it now? You know what I mean? If you're a small business that's never been targeted previously, you think it'll never happen to me. And it's only when the proverbial hits the fan, they start panicking and running around thinking, what should we have done previously? So it's just changing cultures and changing mindsets, I think.
Yeah, I agree entirely. And I think the other thing that we talked about, maybe touched on as well, is the idea that once you've gone through that process and that investment to get those credentials, to get that education, to get those systems in place, is shout about it, talk about it, tell people about it. One of the key things we're trying to talk about is that is actually a differentiator for companies in the market. At the moment, there's some astounding figures to talk about how consumers will jump ship if they perceive that a company isn't treating their data carefully or suffers a breach. And quite often, they won't jump ship if you actually suffer a breach, as long as you respond appropriately. But the key thing is being educated and being aware of that. And the shocking statistic I saw was by size of organization and type of organization where that consumer perception lies, in so much as we trust apparently large organizations, including insurers, but also government. Well, actually government is low down the list, but healthcare we trust. What we don't trust generally is smaller companies, and particularly micro and startup. And that'd be an interesting thing to drill into, whether that's a perception that smaller companies can't invest in that. But you absolutely can. The overhead to actually take on board Cyber Essentials isn't prohibitive. And then you can actually talk about that. You can use that in your marketing collateral. You can talk to people about those credentials. But also what we're also seeing, and I think it was mentioned in previous presentations, is that it's becoming more of a gateway criteria for going into bids for working with larger organizations, certainly for government. I was chatting to a great company that we know well down in Preston, Redmore Health. And I mentioned, I asked the question of you guys, do you know anything about Cyber Essentials? And they just said, yeah. absolutely, we're accredited, and everything we go for requires that accreditation. They do work in healthcare, so perhaps that's not unusual, but that trying to justify the investment, I think, even if it's a modest investment, is the challenge that we're trying to help with.
Nick, Ben Wainwright just popped a question in the chat as well. That's, I think, for Chris. Ben asks, does the NCSC still advocate not forcing people to change passwords now, or does that depend on your organisational maturity? Chris?
Sorry, I was on mute there. So I think it comes down to organisational maturity and policy. I think I'd have to double check, but I'm pretty sure NCSC's latest stance is that there's no requirement to change passwords so long as you have a strong password policy in place, such as having 3 random words, because research shows that the time it takes to crack a random 3-word password is in looking to like millions of years. So long as organizations have a good password policy, there may not be that need to change passwords. That said, it's all about good password hygiene. So make sure staff aren't reusing the same password for critical accounts and sensitive information. And if a compromise is suspect, and obviously that's when an organization needs to enforce changes in passwords.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
Yeah, just going back into some of the questions on just some of the things that have come up. I'm interested to know that with the audience, the people that are in, how frequently you are asked around your own cyber credentials. Is that something that in businesses? I think we've got a few here that are operating in Lancashire. I know certainly, I kind of look, as someone who's self-employed, but can't remember being asked by anybody where when I've gone to do contracts, what are your cyber credentials? I wonder if those, I'm sure, slightly bigger businesses or much bigger businesses than mine are on the call, but who is being asked that in the course of business in this call?
We do get asked every once in a while, but we tend to offer that information up front rather than being asked it, because it can differentiate you versus somebody else down the road whose prices may be the same, but they're not showing that they care about cyber. And I think we have one business off the back of that.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, Chris. Absolutely. That's the message we're trying to champion. So thanks for sharing that.
It's interesting. I mean, anecdotally, in a previous role, and the managing director in a large SME, cybersecurity was something that was never really at the forefront of the mind, to say. And I'm just remembering back to sort of situations where I've spoken to other SME owners, and particularly, I suppose, on a technical level, this, and again, as a consumer, someone who's bought this equipment, malware protective software for machines, and never really fully understanding actually what it is you're buying when you buy these packages. Any kind of quick tips, any kind of quick piece of advice of what people should be looking for with that sort of thing? Obviously, cyber essentials apart, all the other stuff that goes with that. But what about when kind of investing in a piece of kit for machines and whatever? What are the recommendations there?
It's an interesting one. I mean, for us, certainly, I can only speak about us as an organisation at the university, that we have a number of packages that we are actively encouraged, if we manage our own machines, and chased very actively to install and update. And for any devices that we have, obviously we're a large organisation, so it's a slightly different proposition. Those updates are managed. I mean, I'd probably defer to Chris in many ways about market offerings, but I think most of the main main brands offer a good product, and the case is just make sure you update it, make sure you're continually looking at it, don't leave it stale. There's always a challenge that you might get caught, but the best protection you can have is to patch yourself regularly and update your antivirus signatures, and stay on top of that proactively. It's not something to just sit back. But I don't know whether, Chris, you have any other ideas.
I think you're aiming that at the other Chris, but can I just chime in again? I think having something centrally manageable is important, especially when you've got more than, say, 5 or 10 people in a business. If you are, you're a one-man band, it's fair enough to get something that you can sort of buy off the shelf for 25 quid and you run it manually. But if you've got a handful of people all over the place, and especially working remotely, if you can monitor and see what changes have been made and what threats have been quarantined, I think that's absolutely essential.
Absolutely. And just a quick question back to yourself, Chris. If you work in a micro enterprise that doesn't have that, is there an idea that then you might work potentially, and I don't know with your organisation, Kay, but with external organisation to help you with that? And that's what Chris, you just answered. Sorry.
I'm sorry. Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sorry, I'm just kind of throwing that back as, I have my own answer to this in many ways, but the idea that if you're a micro enterprise that doesn't have that level of sophistication, or just has 2 or 3 people that maybe are currently working in different houses, is that a service that you could work with a service provider to
yeah, exactly. And we've had a number of instances where we've had, say, friends of friends who run businesses. It's like, oh, the computers are running like a bag of spanners at the minute. Can you have a look at it? And they just assume it's because the computers are getting old. They don't think that there's all sorts crawling around in Google Chrome and capturing passwords and doing key tracking and all that sort of thing. It's only when you demonstrate and you run something like malware bytes, all the unwanted programs that potentially get flagged up and they go, crikey, I never realized. Again, it's all down to education, telling people not to go on dodgy websites or install cracked software. And, it's the old adage, isn't it? If you get something for free, then you're the product. If you pay a premium for something, even if it's a little premium, the product can be managed, it can be updated, it can be worked upon. If something's for free, the chances are, they're getting something from you, aren't they? Whether you know about it or not.
No, absolutely. One area that we haven't quite touched upon is part of Cyber Foundry delivery, and I think Chris is looking at things like this with NCSC as well, is the idea of scenario planning. And we look at it slightly differently in terms of looking at an investment in different contexts for a business and what that, trying to map that investment and that opportunity in slightly different ways. But the other aspect is scenario planning for a cyber issue as a business, and the idea that without being pessimistic, it's not a case of if it will happen, when it will happen. And that doesn't mean it will, but it means that you plan for that. That's something that naturally we would advocate, but it's a time-consuming thing. It allows you to map your own risk in that process anyway. Is that a concept that anybody's adopted, familiar with? It plays into things that I think Simon included in his research around cyber insurance, for example. So effectively managing your risk a little bit better. Is that something anybody's heard of or adopted?
If I could just jump in there, Nick, one tool I didn't mention was the NCSC's Exercise in a Box, which is a free tool that businesses can use for scenario planning. So you can test your response to a cyber incident in peacetime, and it walks you through the steps you need to take and look at your own organizational policy around certain cyber breaches and what you might do. That way you can test your response to a cyber incident in peacetime as opposed to the real thing. So that way you improve your scenario planning, and it also walks you through some of the main concepts as well. So this is a fantastic tool to bring in the leadership team or the exec board who may not be familiar with some of the concepts, or who may need to you may need to demonstrate the importance of the impact these cyber attacks can have and the importance for good scenario planning.
We've actually looked at that exercise in the box a few times, and a good way to explain to businesses is how often do you do your fire drill? You would like to think that you don't ever have a fire, but everyone knows what to do if the fire alarm goes off. You all go out of the building in an orderly manner. You all go on the playground or the car park, and you do your register. And it's the same thing with exercise in the box. It's practicing for when things do go wrong or if they do go wrong. So yeah, I can advocate that.
So I think just give another semi-humorous anecdotal experience of my own working in many years ago in an SME where we actually ran an exercise to try and brunt force crack all our passwords within the organization, and we were an IT company, and every password got hacked. There weren't 3 random words in those days, I don't think, Chris, but sadly the advice was slightly different, I think, back then. But yeah, they were all cracked inside, I think, under about 2 seconds, aside from my own, and I was extremely pleased about that. Not long after that, I then gave my laptop to the technical guys to do some work on, just it needed something done, and gave them my password. So it comes back to the human element again. It caught us out, and I was reading some fascinating things around. Even there's a startling statistic. I think it's about 78-79% of the providers themselves, the large-scale antivirus malware providers, have all been hacked. This isn't something that is unique to your organization. It's not unique to the size, the nature. Anybody can be hacked. The idea being is that you reduce your risk, but you still account for it, you manage it, and you mitigate it. So any of these conversations we're really interested in, but also interested in working out with industry as well, because it's not something we deliver. We're just trying to extol the benefits of doing that and linking it out. But it's been a fascinating session today. Thank you, everyone.
Charles, sorry, did you just have a comment?
Oh, I was just going to say, before you panic about all your simple passwords, do remember that nowadays password entry systems don't let you do more than about 3 attempts. So it takes a lot longer to hack. So that's why 3 random words is nowadays considered okay. Yes.
I must admit, the interesting you say these anecdotes. Last year, having a conversation with somebody and saying, did you know that some percentage number of people, your password will be your first child's name followed by the year of birth, and the turned beetroot red in front of me, kind of realised that she'd fallen foul of that particular rule. I think I'm going to bring it to a little bit of a close there, everybody. I think unless there's any more questions in the chat coming in, I know 1 or 2 people have left, and we're coming up towards half 4. So a particular thanks to Chris for joining us from the NCSC, but Nick, Colin, Charles, and Simon, thank you so much for bringing together a really insightful conversation, and obviously something that for ourselves and for many businesses across the county, it's such an important subject as we kind of push forward with future technology to make sure we're doing so off a platform that is secure and allows for resilient growth. Thanks to everyone that's joined. As I say, from Monday, we're back on till Thursday with the last remaining seminars. I hope you can join us again. But until then, have a lovely weekend, everybody, and we'll catch up again soon.
Fantastic.
Thanks, see you later, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Nick, are you okay to?
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, if anybody else from our side wants to stay on, Olive.
I'll just make sure that.
Do you need me to stay on at all, or shall I leave you to it?
Always happy to have a chat, Gemma. I'd be interested in your opinions on it, or conversation on next.